that. I could do that. So, let me ask you a question. Are you completely burnt on kink at Pride? Is that a topic that you've...
That's a danger topic.
I understand it's a danger topic.
Hold on. What's your take on it? My answer will depend on what your take on it is, so I can tell what kind of conversation it's going to be.
It'll probably be contentious. My take doesn't. Okay, look. Maybe I misunderstand your take. I kind of engaged with you back and forth. When you made some takes on Twitter, and correct me if I'm misquoting you. Mm-hmm. You said something like, "Pride should be safe, uncontroversial, family friendly, etc." I kind of take the tact that the protest element of Pride needs to remain intact, because we have not, we here in America may feel that we've made the progress that is required to transfer Pride from something that is rooted in and very much still a protest for queer acceptance around the world, mm-hmm. and move it more to a family friendly faced environment for everybody. I love the idea. I think that's been done with a lot of Pride, by the way. Corporatizing Pride. I mean, Verizon floats going down as part of Pride is pretty common, and a lot, especially liberal city prides. A lot of those places have dumbed it down. But the idea of a protest-based Pride is something I'm defensive of, and that's my take.
No, I don't disagree with that. I think, sorry, God, I think you have my take correct. Down to a point. I think part of Pride should be that family-friendly, accessible thing. The main thing to me is so Pride has to serve a lot of purposes, right? I mean, it's got to be fun. We all want to go there. The protest element is important. It's a sign of political solidarity, exposure, expression. But I think especially now that, at least in most of this country, most big cities in this country, being gay or being trans is significantly less stigmatized than it might have been, say, 20 years ago. I feel like now we're reaching a point where we're reaching a degree of acceptance where there's probably an understanding on the part of a lot of young people who are queer or who think they're queer that there are resources they could access at Pride that they might not be able to access just wandering up there unattended. That there's a chunk of Pride should be a place that you can just go to with your family, and it's kept not uncontroversial, really, because gay people are always going to be controversial as long as we live in a society like this, but uncontroversial in the sense that, there's a reasonable expectation that you could go there, with family and with friends without it being, this big party performative celebration activism thing. A chunk of it. You go there with the kid gets some pamphlets from some little kiosks from local advocacy groups, and it's here's how you bind your chest if you're a trans guy or whatever,
So is that what you meant when you tweeted that you supported a two-party or a two-state solution for Pride?
Yeah, basically. I don't care what the relative proportions are. I just think it should be a good chunk. You know what I mean? And you can go there and it's not a super big deal. And if the rest of it's people running around doing kink or sex shit, I don't really care. I don't think this contributes much harm to society.
I don't think it does either. So, you bring up something interesting, and I agree. It's a different thing to be a queer person in a big city in America than it was 20 years ago when I was younger. And maybe a little bit of my head is still stuck in that, but I feel like there's still a whole lot of room for improvement, to put it very mildly, in the way that LGBTQ people are accepted and treated worldwide. Right. There are 76 countries where homosexuality is explicitly illegal, and the punishments for those can range from death to incarceration to ostracization, to being labeled as a sex offender and everything in between. There's also currently a bunch of ongoing pieces of legislation that just don't seem to want to die, mostly in southern states, actively attacking trans people, trans children. I mean, I'm sure you've covered these things, right?
From time to time.
And so, right. So for me, that is just evidence that Pride it's not time to transfer Pride to a family-friendly street fair. Now, I don't think you're advocating for that. I think that a lot of the stuff that you're advocating for already exists at a lot of the Pride events.
It does,
Pride
yeah.
is a month. Pride is a month, right? It's not just one event. It's a whole month where all over the globe there are different types of demonstrations, and many of those places have family-friendly meet and greets where queer kids can meet activists and meet each other in a safe environment where there's not leather daddies leading people around and
Now,
blah blah blah, right?
I just want to be clear too. Like, I don't think the presence of like leather daddies or like dildo suits that people run around. I don't think this like breaks children's brains. Like they see it and instantly they die. You know. Well, I just think that it's a matter of like putting on a good face for like parents who might be on the fringe about this kind of stuff, and it might make it easier for the kids to make a good argument, you know? Because I know
Sure.
if you're like a 16-year-old trans girl, or you're like in the closet, you know, and you're wondering like, okay, I probably need to make friends here who are trans. I can't just have like straight cis friends. I need to find some relatable people. I need to be able to get that outreach, you know? And you're talking to your parents, and your parents aren't like crazy woke or whatever. It's probably easier to sell them on the idea of like, oh, there's just like some little pride thing, whatever. We can go get like cotton candy. It's just like a little street fair thing. Haha, no, it's not like the rest of the pride, you know? Haha. Then it is like, okay, now let's go to the giant dick float where people are, where the automatic laser cannon that targets cishet people is firing indiscriminately into the crowd, you know, like slaughtering
Sure.
millions, you know? It's just an easier argument to make.
Agreed. So I understand that. I think those spaces already exist.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm torn with desire for the kind of original spirit of Pride to remain intact, because once again, the fight for queer acceptance here in America has not been won as much better as it may have gotten for people, especially in big cities. In more rural areas, gay people are still widely oppressed, both in schools and in public. There's still tons and tons and tons of places that need to hear that original message of out of the closets into the streets. We're here, we're queer, get used to it. And that really is the energy for me that defines Pride. And I've seen moral panics about Pride, and I've read about moral panics about Pride that predate me knowing about it, right? So back in the 1970s, the moral panic surrounding Pride was men and women, men kissing men in public, and women kissing women, along with the ever-present undercurrent of pedophilia / what about the children / how do I explain this to my child? And it was also and trans people will love this one, men dressing as women. And the question was, mostly from conservative circles, how do I explain this to my children?
Which is the stupidest question. I mean, it takes like 2 seconds, you know? Well, it's a guy,
Right.
They like a guy. That's it. It's really simple stuff, actually. It was always a really bad faith, concern troll. The only concern that I have, this isn't necessarily a problem right now, but it's that the original spirit of Pride is a direct reaction to oppression, which means that if we ever want to see a day where like queer people aren't oppressed, that attitude is going to have to change as well. Just naturally as like a byproduct of the political discourse, you know.
How much should it change, though? That's really the question, right? How much should we allow what I would call straight normie culture to impinge upon how homosexuals, LGBTQIA people present themselves publicly, right? Now, I'm not talking about normalizing dildo suits or leather daddies in public and shit, right? That's not, in my mind, what Pride is about. But those things are encompassed as part of Pride. Part of Pride is meant to be shocking, right? Part of Pride is meant to be shocking to the sensibilities of people who misunderstand LGBTQ people.
Right, of course.
It's not necessarily about fitting in.
No, not about
it's
fitting
not about
in.
Like, it's about we're among you, right? We do fit in 7 days a week, 364 days a year. But during the Pride demonstration, we let you know we're here.
Well, the shock serves a purpose, right? You know what I mean? Like, if right now we had a big, like, women's march parade, and it was, like, women, like, you know, running around with their ankles exposed and big signs saying, "We can vote now, man pigs," it would come off as a little antiquated. The shock serves a political purpose. In 50 years, it may be the case, at least in some parts of America, that, you know, queer identities are accepted to the point where the idea of Pride being, like, this big, like, shocking wake-up to the establishment comes off almost like this antiquated boomer tradition. And in fact, stuff like this has happened before, you know? You see this exact same sort of thing happening with older and younger generations of black Americans, where older generations of black Americans have a wildly different relationship, like people who grew up during the Jim Crow era, a wildly different relationship to the concept of like racial liberation than younger black people do. The older black people keep in their ways, and the younger black people just don't do it. Because in their mind,
you have to factor in the generational oppression as well.
Well, of course, and I'm not saying
that of course shapes this younger generation of black people's view on the ability to achieve actual black liberation.
Of course, but I'm not saying the oppression doesn't exist anymore. I'm saying the attitude towards it has changed. This is so, people have talked about this to varying extents. Obviously, this varies massively between people, but as I understand it, black people who grew up during the Jim Crow era, they're very rooted in this respectability politics attitude towards achieving racial liberation. Black people, you talk a certain way, you stand up straight, you wear a suit when you go out and interview for a job. And younger black people.
The idea was to not allow conservatives and racists to undercut you by just judging you on your appearance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like don't give them the easy shot. Okay, if they're going to be racist against you, they have to do it for your skin color alone, not because of how you dress or how you talk. But younger black people these days, who are very involved in racial politics, they tend to be a lot more for like a more directly confrontational approach. Like, yeah, I can do what I want. I can wear what I want. I don't care if I have my pants down below my knees. Who cares? I'm still American. I don't care. That difference in attitude.
And why should anyone care?
Well, no, of course not. Yeah. But generational changes can affect the ways in which protest movements function. And I worry that as time goes on, the attitude towards pride is going to change immensely. Right now, most kids, like in America today, are watching cartoon shows that have explicit depictions of like homosexual parents like kissing and stuff, or like gay,
which is fantastic, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
In comparison, to speak as somebody that grew up in the 80s watching those kind of cartoons, it was unthinkable for there to be a trans character in a show, or
now
an openly homosexual cartoon character that had a gay relationship in a show. That's fucking would have been completely and utterly off the table.
Steven Universe
during my childhood.
Yeah, Steven Universe is like 5 incredibly popular seasons of explicit like gay and trans and non-binary allegories. The Owl House, which is currently airing, basically has like a gender fluid like lesbian as the protagonist. Basically, like
how many of these are reaching like younger kids though?
I mean, even Blue's Clues.
Steven Universe, as I know it, is kind of aimed at the like later teens, 20s crowd, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Blue's Clues recently had a giant pride march in their show with like they had like beavers with like the trans guy scars with like when you don't have the tits anymore or whatever. Those things, the things here. This is like Blue's Clues. I mean, we're reaching like baby kids here, So the only point that I'm making, and all this is wonderful, it's not just that, by the way. It's so much more. The thing that I like about this, I mean, obviously it makes a lot of people, they grow up, they feel like more included. Eventually, all these kids, they're 8 years old now, they grow up, animation, media, it's all very gay friendly these days, or queer friendly. They're going to grow up, and the idea of a pride parade, of being super like angry and like shocking the straight establishment, it's not going to be as relevant to their experiences growing up. With time, pride will change, and I just want us to be amicable to those changes rather than to enforce a generational divide when that has to happen.
I completely agree with that. Okay. I do not have a disagreement that pride should represent the generation that it represents, right? I don't think that